Previously on Purple Haze feedback, Passione has been taken over by Giorno Giovanna, having killed the previous boss Diavolo to destroy his drug trade. However, the narcotics team at the heart of Diavolo's drug empire has eluded Giorno's grasp thus far. A small team of Passione's members is tasked with hunting them down. One of them is Panna Cotta Fugo, who remains haunted to this day of the moment he left Bruno's team. The team of three move towards Sicily, believing their enemy to be hiding there, each carrying their own burden that they must bear. Chapter 6, Tempting Lips, Part 2. Murolo had decided they were better off avoiding the ports, so they anchored off the rocky coast and made landfall in a lifeboat. The coast of the island was lined with rocky cliffs that made landing impossible, but they used the power of their stands to ascend the sheer cliff face. That is, Fugo and Sheila E used Purple Haze and Voodoo Child to carry them and Murolo, whose stand was not really suited to feats of strength. Fugo had to be very careful not to release his virus.
Will the yacht be okay?
There's a security system on board. Anyone tries to board it, we'll know. If the cameras see Volpe or the others, the ship's rigged to explode.
What if innocent bystanders board it with them?
Details, schmeetails, sucks to be them.
Sheila E stared down at the yacht a moment, then had Voodoo Child pick up a boulder and fling it at the yacht.
Eri!
It hit the yacht at such high speed, it went all the way through and the ship sank.
Jesus,
Murolo said. Sheila E ignored him. Let's go, she said, and walked away. The others followed. No paths led near the cliff, and they were forced to pick their way across perilous slopes. This mist-like rain showed no signs of turning into a full-on downpour, yet seemed equally unwilling to stop. He looked up, but couldn't see a single crack in the wall of clouds overhead. The weather was often unpleasant on the coast this time of year, but
it helped us land undetected, but somehow it just feels too easy.
After all, the narcotics team had managed to slip through Giorno's network and escape to Sicily. Who knew what they were capable of? Fugo shivered. Every time he thought about Giorno, a chill ran down his spine. He hadn't worked with Giorno for very long, but when he thought back, he couldn't think of a single thing the blonde boy had said that was wrong. Every move he made was right, every action a step towards the larger goals to come. Every time Fugo had been convinced there was nothing to be done, Giorno had fixed things effortlessly.
Why did Giorno send me after the narcotics team?
That boy did nothing without purpose. There must be some clear reason behind this plan. He simply couldn't see Giorno throwing suspected traitors after actual traitors in the hopes of clearing the deck.
He must have a reason, some hidden, ulterior motive.
At this point, he realized Sheila E was staring at him.
What?
He asked. Sheila E kept her eyes on him, never once glancing forward, yet never stumbled. One wrong step on this rocky ground and you'd fall, but she never put a foot wrong. It was like watching a mountain cat or a ninja.
You were thinking about Giorno, right?
She said. Fugo gulped.
Nothing bad,
he said.
I was just wondering if he really intends for this strategy to succeed. When you first met Giorno, what did you think?
Think?
Feel.
Fugo hesitated. Sheila E's eyes seemed to see right through him. They'd catch him if he lied. He told the truth.
We didn't know who he really was, so we didn't size him up exactly. I thought the way he presented himself could have been mistaken for weakness, but it seemed like he had the potential to be much more. That's what I thought at the time anyway. We all thought he was a new recruit Vucchella had found.
Sheila E seemed dubious. At length, she said,
Giorno said this to me. You take me for an honest man because you yourself are honest. I asked Mr. the same question. He said he thought Giorno was lucky, someone who'd bring luck to the team. You see what I mean? Mr.'s the lucky one, isn't he? When people look at Giorno, they see something so unfathomable, they see themselves reflected in him. They're swallowed up in his potential and wind up seeing only themselves.
She had no way of knowing, but a boy named Koichi Hirose had once described Giorno as a gentle soul. A strange thing to say considering he stole my luggage. Koichi himself was a gentle soul, one who inspired devotion in the unlikeliest of friends. Fugo was at a loss for words.
By that logic, the one with untapped potential is you,
Sheila E said skeptically.
At the very least, you believe as much, deep down. But I look at your stand, at the deadly virus purple haze spreads, and I see finality, the end of the line. Where is the potential there?
Fugo had no answer.
I really don't know, he said.
Stop squabbling, you two!
Murolo called out. He was struggling to keep up with them.
Mista and Giorno are our superiors. We're not fit to talk about them like that. Disrespectful.
Sheila E didn't look back. Instead, she started sniffing the air.
That smell! What? It smells like vomit, but if the stomach acid is this heavy, rotting but not fermenting, it must be...
She muttered, then started flat out running, feet dancing across the points of the rocks.
Hey!
Fugo yelled.
You wait for me in town! I've got to check on something!
She yelled, without breaking stride. A moment later, she was out of sight.
Check on what?
I don't know.
Murolo and Fugo stared after her, confused. Roads in Sicilian cliffside towns are generally quite narrow. Where the hills are steep, people take what land can be built upon and make the most efficient use of it, clustering homes together. Many roads are too small for cars, so small people can barely pass each other without rubbing shoulders. Likewise, yards are an unheard of luxury, and the walls of the buildings face directly onto the road. If you look towards the sea, you have a glorious view, but in all other directions, things get claustrophobic. The contrast proves a source of great interest to tourists, but for the locals, well, you'd have to live there to know. Sheila E found herself on a narrow street like this. The aging population had left this area without residents, the homes abandoned as the council tried to decide whether to flatten them or preserve them for their historical value. The pavement was wet from the rain. She crouched down, staring at a stain. She leaned in and sniffed. She did not touch. She kept her eyes open, on her guard, mindful of her surroundings, no closer to it than she needed to be. She checked it again, and then nodded.
A man drank often, but did not habitually do drugs. Not a member of the team, then.
Her sense of smell was good enough that she could tell whoever's puke this was had thrown up under the influence of manic depression. This was not a talent given by her stand, but something she had been born with. A sense she had honed as a child, running around the woods with her pet dog. That dog had been her best friend until the day some local thugs had beaten him to death, laughing all the while. The anger she'd felt then had never left her. It was one of the main reasons she detested humanity, why she was quick to judge. Part of her remained convinced that right below the surface everyone was like the bastards that had killed Toto. Her sister's murder had only cemented this state of mind. There was little chance of it changing again.
But the reaction's too powerful, too raw. He didn't take this as a drug.
As she muttered, something bizarre happened to the wall behind her. It moved. The flat, solid surface rippled like the surface of a pond. The ripple was moving towards her, down the wall, and along the ground towards her feet. Then something reached up from the gap between the paving stones. A hand, as thin as a piece of paper. The hand was holding a needle, the tip of it poised to poke Sheila E in the back, but she was already gone. She jumped. Like a mountain goat, she'd kicked the ground, flung herself to the wall, caught it with the tips of her fingers and hung there like a spider. The flattened hand realized it had failed and withdrew.
That was...
Sheila E had a good idea who her enemy was.
Soft machine. The power to remove all thickness from things. You're supposed to be on our side, Mario Zucchero! As she spoke, her eyes darted this way and that, checking the cracks in the pavement, the chinks in the wall, every microscopic gap Soft Machine could hide in. He must be on the move. Zucchero, you were sent after Volpe before us. Did you betray us? Or did they fill you with drugs, turning you into their puppet? Sheila E bounded away from the wall, moving into the open, up to a lightning rod on the roof of the building. From there, she had a good view of the town, of the narrow, twisting roads. I see. Soft Machine is helpless in the open, but Tower Mean is full of hiding places. The perfect hunting ground. Sheila E sniffed the air, but the scent of vomit was too strong, completely covering the scent of Zucchero's body. The rain was covering his scent as well. And when it's raining, he can hide in the gap between the pavement and the water. Ideal weather for him. She was in trouble, yet her grin suggested otherwise. The grin was more of a sneer, really. You know who I am, Zucchero? She called. You work for a team in Rome, so you must have heard the name Sheila E. I'm the one who crushed the Milance's gambling operation, letting Passione move in on their territory when I was only 10 years old. That's why I was promoted to the boss's personal guard. No reaction. She kept talking. The E stands for Erini, the Furies. The name is my vow to show no mercy to any enemy. Well, Zucchero, do you have the balls to take up arms against my name? No matter how much she baited him, Zucchero made no reply. There was a shimmer at the corner of a wall. Sheila E sprang into action. Voodoo Child hurtled towards it, slamming its fist into the wall, but it had been nothing but a spurt of rainwater. Nothing more. Even so, on guard against the enemy, taking advantage of her attack, Sheila E unleashed a barrage of blows in all directions. The walls and ground began to crumble, but Zucchero was nowhere to be found. Still, her barrage continued. The vibrations reached Zucchero where he hid, but unless she scored a direct hit, it didn't matter. All he could feel was heat, like he was burning up inside. The sensation forced him to remain flattened. He attacked anyone who approached. He'd been turned into a landmine. The instincts and techniques he'd mastered crawling his way up from poverty to a position of some influence in the mob had been reduced to reflexive responses. A robot following a program. No, less than that. He was little more than the sensor that tells a door to open. Mixed with the pounding was the sound of Sheila E muttering. Zucchero, 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 chanting his name. She sounded mad, but Zucchero was beyond such nuance. He simply headed towards the voice, instinctively trying to get behind her. His body remembered the right distance to strike. Without conscious thought, he flew forward, Soft Machine's needle directly aiming for her back, but only piercing empty air. Zucchero's instincts failed him. Deprived of a clear goal, he fell into a panic. Sheila E was there, except she wasn't. He slid his flattened head out from the gap in the stones, confirming this incomprehensible state of affairs with his own eyes. But what he saw? Lips. Just lips. The cracks she'd made in the pavement had formed a pair of lips. The lips were chanting his name. Voodoo Child's power was echoing Sheila E's words. She'd made her speech not to wind him up or build herself up, but to set this trap. And a moment later, the trap snapped shut. The crack he was peering out of, and all the cracks around it, turned into a giant pair of lips. Snap! The lips parted and bit down. Zucchero's wafer-thin body strained against the teeth, like someone trying to tear open a plastic bag. He couldn't move. The lips began sliding across the ground, stretching him, like a hunter skinning an animal to make a rug. I thought you'd stretch more than that, Sheila E said, walking towards him. She'd planned all of this. The moment he'd vanished, she'd guessed he must be using sound to navigate, and used that to her advantage. She always planned to capture, not kill. He was a valuable clue. I thought you'd stretch like chewing gum, but I guess not. You're flat, but that's all. Zucchero's lips flapped, unable to speak clearly. Oh, you can't talk? Don't worry, I can read lips. Say whatever you need to say. What? Gotta what? Speak clearly.
She grabbed his face with both hands and tugged on it, trying to get a better look. Zucchero's behavior didn't change at all. His lips just kept on repeating the same thing, as if he was whispering the same mantra to himself over and over. Sheila E could just barely make it out.
Gotta move. Gotta move. Gotta move. Move. Move.
Got to move. Or else what? Before she could ponder, his body crumpled, then tore. All the blood in his veins came gushing out, spraying in all directions. His bodily functions had been amped up so high, his flesh could no longer stand up to the force of his own blood pressure. Sheila E leapt backwards, Zucchero's body inflated. In death, his soft machine no longer in effect. Every part of his body had been destroyed, his very bones turned to dust, so that his body looked less like a human than a rolled up wet blanket.
Jesus!
Sheila E grimaced. Zucchero had not just been turned into a puppet, he'd been killed. His enemy had been so much stronger than him that it had not even been worth it for them to keep him as a puppet. But that meant... Shit! Sheila E turned on her heel and ran back the way she'd come.
Zucchero was a decoy, buying time!
A decoy to draw her away from Fugo and Murolo. The enemy had been waiting for them. Stand name Voodoo Child. Owner Sheila Capezzuto, 15. Destruction B. Duration E. Speed A. Control B. Range E. Potential B. Power. When it punches something, that thing grows lips, which repeat words spoken in secret nearby. Words the speaker knows will make others think less of them, have power, and stain the area around them. All humans are hiding something, and Voodoo Child can find out what. A close-range power type, it can also punch people, growing lips that blather that person's innermost secrets. This causes most to die of shock. Panna Cotta Fugo's former teammate Leone Abbacchio had once explained his power thusly. It's feral. Attacks explode out of it, then it vanishes like a summer squall. He'd fought alongside Fugo a number of times. Each time, Abbacchio investigated the crime and Fugo executed the culprit. Sometimes they were covering up business scandals in the name of protection, or eliminating those who tried to embezzle from the mob, or executing the minimal number of Passione members required to contain internal conflicts. Nothing the police would be involved in, just problems that needed to be taken care of. The bulk of these requests came from Bucciolati, but some came from Polpo, and these they often kept secret from Bucciolati. Their capo needed the job done, but they knew, for example, that their team leader would not be able to stomach the murder of a child. If Fugo decided a particular job would prey on Bucciolati's conscience, he kept it secret. Abbacchio went along with this, never breathing a word. People around them seemed to view them as partners, but Fugo never once asked Abbacchio about his past, and Abbacchio never asked about his. Neither understood the other. If they had ever been in a situation where only one could survive, Fugo was certain Abbacchio would abandon him to his fate, and he felt sure he would do the same. They trusted each other, but they were not close. There was as little between them as the day they'd met. Abbacchio had been a policeman. When his corruption was discovered and he was on trial, Fugo went to see him in prison. He'd accepted bribes from one of Passione's thugs, and Fugo was looking for information. The thug had died in police custody, of hypothermia, in midsummer. In other words, he'd been dealt with by his superiors, and only Abbacchio knew anything more. The booze and the women had left him a shell of a man with deep, dark circles under his eyes. He fixed Fugo with a reptilian stare and said not a word.
Be reasonable, Abbacchio. A man like you goes to prison, you'll wind up dead. You know what happens to ex-cops in there. The guards won't help you. They hate you more than anyone. What exactly were you paid to overlook? I hear you hesitated when you should have shot that suspect. Was this because he had something on you? Was it drugs? Was that man dealing drugs and you let him be? The silent treatment's all I'm getting.
Fugo frowned. He was beginning to suspect that the recent flood of narcotics on the market was coming from within Passione and wanted proof.
We've demolished most of the other families, but there's more drugs than ever. It must be because our mystery boss is selling the very drugs he's forbidden.
If that was the case, Bucciolati was quickly going to find himself between a rock and a hard place. Bucciolati had earned his reputation as an honorable gangster in part because the people knew his stance on drugs. If that were to prove a hollow lie, he'd be done for.
What should I do?
As he racked his brains, Abbacchio suddenly spoke. Why? He said.
Huh?
What makes a shallow kid like you look so serious? He growled, the furrows in his brow deepening. He looked for all the world like he was picking a fight, but that didn't quite fit.
What?
You and I aren't that different. We're both scumbags. So what makes you so sure of yourself?
Abbacchio,
I know you're like me. I know you're a failure. I can see the rot in your eyes. So where do you get this confidence?
I feel like I should be insulted.
Tell me why, and I'll tell you what I know.
Tell you what exactly?
Your reason for living. Tell me what it is that keeps you going.
I've merely sworn loyalty to my syndicate.
Then tell me how to do the same,
Abbacchio said.
Fugo blinked at him.
You want to join?
If that's reason enough for you, it's worth trying.
You're an ex-cop. They'll never promote you. They'll never give you territory of your own. You'll be someone's henchman your whole life. Are you ready for that? And that's if you don't get stabbed in the back. The family won't protect you. Not really. You're better off taking the money, moving abroad and living it up.
Abbacchio just glared at him. The darkness in his eyes was terrifying. It was drugs that brought him and Abbacchio together. And now he was about to meet the source of those drugs, Massimo Volpe and his team, and fight to the death.
Hello everyone, welcome to the end of the episode. We've got a fair few things to talk about, so let's get straight into it. The first one is Sheila E's stand, Voodoo Child. It's not a very interesting stand as far as stands can go, but I think it summarizes her character very nicely in terms of telling us what she's motivated by and the methods that she will use in order to pursue it, of course talking about her sister's death. Of course I gave it that vocal effect during the previous episode, but I realized logically it wouldn't make that much sense for the effect to be in this episode, because it's meant to sound like Sheila E is the one saying Zucchero's name. It doesn't make sense therefore that it has this effect dubbed over that Zucchero would clearly have been able to recognize. Another point about Sheila E that was brought up in this chapter was her dog that was apparently killed, and it of course brings up the point that it isn't a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure experience without a dead dog, so it can make that claim at least. But of course, you know, this chapter had the first real stand battle between between Zucchero and Sheila E, between Soft Machine and Voodoo Child, and this one is kind of short. I don't think it really encompasses the experience, the full, you know, the kind of thing that we would see in the actual manga. It doesn't go the whole hog, but then if we were to do that, it could be its own novel. Like a really good stand battle may as well be like a full chapter by itself. Maybe not a whole book, maybe I was pushing that a little bit. But we'll actually get to see like a full-on stand battle next chapter, and I'm actually going to do that entire chapter in one big video, so that's going to be very exciting, which is why I actually introduced a little bit of the next chapter, the part that doesn't relate to the stand battle, into this chapter, and that's Abbacchio and Fugo's first meeting in the jail. Now, I should preface this by saying that I pronounced Abbacchio's name very wrong. Apparently it's pronounced Abbacchio, but Abbacchio is how I read it. I'm not Italian, obviously, and I have talked about this before, but it says Abbacchio to me. It's very odd for me to then hear that it's actually pronounced Abbacchio, but from here on in, I will be pronouncing it Abbacchio. It's too late for this chapter because I say it in a bunch of places, and if I miss it even once, then you're just going to hear Abbacchio randomly in the middle of the chapter, and it's just going to sound out of place. So Abbacchio it is for this chapter, and Abbacchio from here on out. Not that I don't think we'll be talking about Abbacchio a lot for the rest of the book. But yeah, we see Abbacchio joining the gang, and it's pretty short. It's a lot shorter than Narancia's scene, for example, in the previous chapter, where we hear about how he joined the gang. And I wanted to talk about that a lot more than Abbacchio, since Abbacchio's scene doesn't actually have any kind of emotional
relevance to us. It just kind of says, hey, Abbacchio wants to join the gang as well after he was caught being a corrupt policeman. But in the case of Narancia, you know, we see that very short scene in the actual manga, but we never dive deep into how Fugo feels about it, since Fugo was the one who found Narancia. But here we actually do, and that to me is so fascinating, because those like those handful of panels that we saw in the manga that we barely thought about why Fugo was there, because it was all about Narancia, right? We never thought about Fugo, and here the book actually sits down and says, let's think about Fugo. And well, that's basically what the book is about. It's basically saying, let's not ignore Fugo, let's see, you know, let's dive into his mind and think about how he would have approached his life after the events of Vento Aurea, knowing that Giorno becomes boss. So, very good. I think that entire sequence was at the core of what Purple Haze Feedback is trying to do, and it does it very well. Unlike the scene with Abbacchio, not that Abbacchio's scene wasn't done well, it just didn't mean as much. So that's all the thoughts that I really had, and with all of it out of the way, I think I can fairly say that it's the end of this chapter. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to give it a like, share it around so we get some more exposure. That will, as I keep saying this, it's almost turned into a mantra. It will really help to give the channel exposure, and that's what the channel needs. And of course, if you guys are excited about more Purple Haze Feedback, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, and it will be coming out weekly. This one's actually a little bit late because I may have been playing a little bit too much of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds this week, but suffice it to say that I will actually get this stuff on time from here on out. And of course, a JoJo analysis video is actually very close to being done. I just had to kind of clean up the video. It turned out to be like a 40-minute video, guys, so even though I did say a couple of weeks ago that a JoJo analysis video was on the way, it just kept growing and growing and growing, and now we're here 2 weeks later and I'm still saying a JoJo analysis video is on the way. I hope you guys are excited about that, as I am. I will see you in the next video, whether it's another episode of the audiobook or it's this JoJo analysis video that I've been spending way too much time on. Take care, guys.